Yeah, but it wouldn't be an oddcast without a bit of last minute drama. I mean, that's our thing, really.
I actually
I
feel
mean,
like we need to have a little mascot for the Oddcast, which is like, the Gremlins?
yeah, yes, that would be so appropriate. That would be
We need a
so
gremlin
appropriate.
wearing an Oddies T-shirt. I feel like
Yeah.
that's our mascot.
So should we tell everybody that we nearly just ended the entire known universe, or do we just keep that to ourselves?
We tell them another time.
Another time, yeah. I mean, there is some very good news this week, as I'm sure all of you are aware of who are watching. Thank you to the 150 that have already jumped on. It is an amazing day, actually. And I see in the comments, some of you, okay, hang on. Before we get to the good news, some of you guys, with all due respect, you need a better hobby, because it was literally 7:01 and an argument had already started in the chat. It was half an hour before the show began, and children, you were already bickering amongst yourselves.
I love it. They camp out. And this is why I feel so much pressure when I don't get the podcast uploaded on time. I feel terrible. Like I'm letting down the entire planet when I don't do things on time. So I very much appreciate the punctuality of all the oddies.
Well, I've got to say, someone's just lost $20 though, because someone earlier in the chat, I can't scroll back and find it. There's literally over 100 comments already, and we're 2 minutes in. Someone bet $20 that I had a cigar, and I don't. Yeah.
Is
Not
that
tonight.
because you've coalesced to all the pressure around you smoking a cigar on the podcast?
Look, I'm a new man. I'm a new man. Old habits are gone. No, I just didn't feel like it. Like, I have cigars when I feel like it. And I just, I don't know. The temperature wasn't right, or I don't know. My spidey senses tingled. I'm not sure, but just didn't feel like it.
Well, before we get into the first thing I want to talk about, I want to just give a shout out to everyone who signed up as an OG Oddie over the last week and prior to that. I think we're almost at 55, which is amazing. And I know it seems insignificant, but it's not insignificant to me. I'm very grateful because all of that is going straight back into the podcast. So thank you guys so much. Very much appreciated. I did have a couple of people asking, I can't remember who it was, if we can extend it. And I don't want to keep extending it. I want this to be for the OGs, so the people who've literally been here the whole time. But I think there's still like one or two available. So if you do want to sign up, but after that, I really do have to like cap it. So
you got to draw a line. You got to draw a line somewhere. There have to be standards, and the standards have to be kept.
And also, I appreciate that not everyone can sign up. So please don't feel pressure to. Like, this is not me trying to peer pressure you. It's more so like, I want to have a cutoff point. We are going to roll out different memberships, but we just wanted to thank you guys and give you, like, what is it? Introductory pricing. So thank you.
Yeah.
But I can't keep
all of that, Carly's problem. Yeah, it's your problem now to deliver on all of that and to make all those OG Oddies super happy that they became OG Oddies. What do you reckon? Let me make your life even more difficult, Carls. What do you reckon? If you're going to give a little bit more time, what if we have something special? I'm not sure what it would be, that you and I can sign for all the OG Oddies that we can give them at our first birthday.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Like a photo?
Yeah. A photo of me? Yeah, a photo of me would be lovely.
A photo of me holding the Spicy Carls plushie. Has that arrived, by the way?
No, I don't know what happened. So I'm going to follow that up. That's on my to-do list. But we never finished your one. So maybe everyone gets a plushie.
Can we? How much are the plushies? I don't know. That scares me. Yeah, let's not make promises we can't afford to keep. All right.
You get a little McDonald's toy. It's this big.
Yeah. Your mouth is writing checks that my pocketbook can't cash. Look, we'll figure something out.
Coffee cups is a cool idea.
Coffee cups, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
But just honestly, in all sincerity, I just want to say thank you. Like, I am really touched, and I know this sounds all like soppy and I don't do emotions, but like seeing how many people have actually joined the Oddcast and like it, I'm a little bit bewildered by it, to be honest. I didn't realize it would like do this. So yay.
Aw. Shucks, everybody, you made Carly blush.
Oh yeah. Okay, so firstly, before we get into anything, you and I
Yeah.
need to have this out because I know that Roy's going to make this as a segment and it's going to go
Right.
up on your YouTube. And I think this is
Right.
really important. So
I see.
I screenshot a comment that was put on one of your videos in regards to me. Now, we're not going to admonish the audience, but we are going to discuss this. So
I see.
someone in your audience called me
Like,
a
we're
Jezebel.
A Jezebel.
A Jezebel
My,
because
my.
of how I swear.
Oh,
So this
right.
is the comment. So hang on, if it loads. I would like to repost this, but she has such a foul mouth, I can't. Which gutter did you drag her from? Because in a recent video, it was motherfucker and fuck, etc. Until I could stand no more. She is a Jezebel with a disgusting mouth. If you knew my background, you would be really surprised that I would say that. But I am not my past. Decency to over me. Your other work I watched, this one was till her foul mouth started. It is unprofessional and an indictment upon good journalism. Either you like her mouth or you think she's hot. I disagree with both summations.
Well, it's a free country. Random internetizen can think and say whatever they like, and so can Carl's J Soda. I happen to like the things you say. And yeah, okay, every now and again, yeah, maybe you swear a little, you get a little too sweary sometimes, but honestly, I think that's the exception, not the rule. And also, like, seriously, like, this sort of, I put this in the same category as that email that I read out to you. Or was it just last week? Was that literally only Wednesday? Goodness,
Yeah.
time is kind of compressed in a really weird way in my head. Yeah, this person who wants me to change what I do because they've expressed their opinion on the internet. For those that don't watch our Wednesday night show, which you should, by the way, I received an email from a beloved fan who told me that he thought he'd found a wonderful Australian commentator until he discovered that I vape. And I clapped back on the basis that, number one, none of his damn business. Number two, I smoke cigars. Thank you very much. And I was actually, I probably wouldn't have felt the need to clap back except that he said I vape. And that I took exception to that very much. No, I put this in exactly the same category. I just, honestly, these people, go start their own show. Just tell them, hey, we look forward to hearing how wonderfully well you do in your podcast. Doing all the things exactly right, as I'm sure you will.
Okay, so aside from the attack on me, like, I don't care, right? Welcome to the internet. But
Yeah.
what I wanted to point out here is how quickly people who are either conservative or right-leaning get tripped up on the delivery of the message as
Yes,
opposed to the content itself, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get into this. We're going to talk about Lydia Thorpe saying that she would burn down Parliament for Palestine. That's the conversation the left's having. Meanwhile, on the right, people are more worried about my potty mouth. You know, we've got to really pick our battles. And can I tell you that me swearing, like most Australians, is really not the top of the priority list.
Can you put your reply back up on the screen? Because I hadn't seen this until literally now. You sprung it on me. But I think this reply is great. You're more offended by words than what's unfolding in this country. The left is talking about burning Parliament down and creating anarchy, and you can't get over some words. Do you hear yourself? Calling a woman a Jezebel. Have you ever stopped to wonder why so many women move to the left? It's because of intolerant ideological Puritans like you. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great reply. And if this random internetizen wants an example of why I like your mouth, that would be it. I think that's a great reply.
Yeah, look, this is my point. I'm certainly not trying to be something that I'm not. And forgive me for just assuming, but most Australians that I know, particularly the industry I work in, this is how we speak. This is what I've picked up from the communities I'm around. I don't know what corner of Australia you are in where no one speaks, you know, with any profanity, but good luck to you. I hope you have a fun time over there. For the most part, most people are fairly relaxed with their language. And you can tell me that I'm an idiot because I swear you can make all these summations about who I am and the way I am. But at the end of the day, I am voluntarily doing this with you, also voluntarily doing this, trying to stand up for our country. And I think that matters more.
Fair, with our audience voluntarily watching, and we're very grateful for them. But we do have to enforce a little bit of discipline, a bit of quick every now and again when you unruly bunch get out of line. So a question from Found Hope. What is a Jezebel? Fair question. So someone said earlier, Jezebel is the insult that you call someone when you want people to know that you read your Bible, which I think is a great summation. So Jezebel is a woman who, in biblical times, she was basically, what would you call a snake? She was a charlatan.
An
She
immoral
put on a
whore.
Well, yeah, but also like put on a wonderful face and sort of white anted people from within and sort of undermined everybody and destroyed things from within. So yes, it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Someone reads their Bible and gets offended about swear words. Okay, I read my Bible and I don't get offended about swear words because I actually read my Bible enough to know that the Bible doesn't say don't swear as in profane words. It says don't swear as in make an oath. And it does talk about not dwelling on evil things, not contemplating evil things, and so forth, and that's true. But it also tells us to be wise, and it tells us to pay attention to the times that we're living in, and all of that, which is literally what we do. We are paying attention to what's going on in the world around us and being wise to the times that we're in. And you know what? Sometimes you have to say that things are fucked. Sometimes you have to actually use a word that some people are going to clutch their pearls over because that is actually the most apt description.
And further to that, as I've said multiple times in the podcast, I was raised in the Catholic school system. I am well versed with the Bible. And dare I mention that Jesus himself liked to sit with the odd fits and the misfits and the prostitutes because
you mean the oddies? He used to
the oddies.
sit with the oddies?
Yeah, he did. And Jesus was very accepting of those people, and the self-righteous ones are usually the ones that Jesus was admonishing. Yeah. So I would say if you're going to sit there and be self-righteous and try and police people's communication methods, well, then maybe you need to look in the mirror. But, you know, this isn't about me trying to like have a crack at someone on the internet. I'm merely trying to point out that we're getting fixated on the wrong things, particularly on the right. And we see this with the Liberal Party, for example. They're more worried about perception and presenting themselves a certain way than they are about the key messaging, which is why people like Jacinta Price and Hastie have to take a backseat in the party because, you know, Susan Ley, who's in charge of the Liberals right now, is like, oh, no, we don't want to be seen doing that. This is why the Liberal Party keeps losing.
And you've seen they're bombing out even further in the polls. If you thought it couldn't get any worse for the major political parties in this country, Susan Ley is gleefully proving you wrong. It can get worse, and she is most definitely making it worse. So Wayne has tried to join, saying the OG tier is full. Carls, can you just make a little more room in there? Just make a little more room in there.
Guys, I don't want to be the person that keeps saying, but one more time and don't worry, we're going to keep extending. And here it's back. I'm going to add a couple more places, but like I do have to at least, you know, stick by my word here. So please, like, if you want to sign up, please do it. And no just pressure again.
Do it tonight. And hey, we'll always be happy to have more people join. You'll just miss the OG label. You'll miss that.
So, I've just added it there, guys. So you should be able to right now. But like I'm trying to do the right thing here, and people be like, "Oh, she keeps saying that, but it's still available."
So Joe, I do like this feck knuckle. That's not bad. That's not bad. I don't mind that. All right.
Can I tell you G's favorite, which by the way is full of profanity. So I'll just close out this segment with that section. But his favorite slur is a cock juggling thunder. Oh shit, G, I've messed it up. Was it? Oh my God.
Oh, that's perfect.
Cock juggling thunder cunt.
So good. Top shelf TV tonight, everybody. Carl can't even get her swear words out.
I was playing it in my head. I'm like, I'm going to trip over this, and then I tripped over it. So
the level of concentration required on your part to get that particular sequence of swear words out is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. That is my segment. That is my thing. But yeah, on the swearing thing, I just find it so interesting that that's something that people still care about in 2025. You know,
would it be a cock juggling thunder cunt?
That's the one. What did I say?
Okay. I have no idea. I have no idea. But whatever it was, I know that Capital G Man is going to be giving you a hard time about it for at least a month. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I constantly fuddle my words. So, you know, you're welcome.
Mondays is all tangent time. I think you're probably right. We're probably right. And GNX, not a name that I'm familiar with. Welcome. What did I just tune into? Yeah, that's fair. I think if you've just come in partway through that segment, Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
apologize, guys. We do try and keep it highbrow most of the time, but sometimes it just descends into full chaos.
James Bennett is saying not all of that segment is going to get clipped. Methinks, oh, you don't know the oddies. You don't know how we roll.
So,
Alrighty, let's move on.
Do we want to do good news, or do you want to talk about what's going on? Like, where do you want to?
Okay, so I think we need to lead with the biggest news, which is the international news that Donald Trump has gone to the Middle East. Last I heard, and it is literally breaking as we're talking. I believe all of the remaining surviving hostages have now been released and are now in the hands of the Israeli Defense Force, and are presumably in a very mixed range of physical conditions, probably none of them good. Excuse me. So as much as people are going to kind of want, we want cameras, we want video, we want to hear from them, they probably need a good month or two back in the real world before. So that's what I've been hearing. All remaining living hostages. Yeah. Which is absolutely amazing, and I think it's an incredible moment. Thankfully, the killing has stopped. So this is there's really two huge celebrations here. Number one, for the people in Gaza, they're now able to go and find what's left of their homes, and let's be honest, the devastation in Gaza is extreme. Like that is a devastated part of the world, and those people, the road that they have ahead of them towards rebuilding is going to be extremely difficult. There are a lot of roadblocks left in between where we are now and actual peace, because the fact is Hamas are still in power. And so long as this is true, the Toucher, I haven't heard anything. I'm not up to date. I've been working on my own videos today, so I haven't been watching this. I hope that Hamas get absolutely rolled by the people of Palestine. I've said it since before this particular outbreak of this particular war 2 years ago. I've said it for many, many years. Hamas are a terrorist group, and the people they terrorize most are the people of Palestine. And I really, really, really hope that this brings about a proper downfall for Hamas. But as far as I'm aware, that hasn't happened. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at a ceasefire. We're looking at a release of hostages. Those are two wonderful things. But the end of Hamas is the only way that any kind of lasting peace can become possible. Not only the end of Hamas, but to see Hamas end and not be replaced with some other version of the same thing, a new name, a rebranding, so to speak, of the same ideology. So there's still a long way to go, but boy, is this a good moment.
It's a great moment, and unfortunately, I do believe most of the progressives are not going to let I'm not going to rest and enjoy this small win. And not to say that it's a massive win for everyone. There's going to be a lot that still needs to be figured out. There's going to be a lot of challenges trying to rebuild, but I've seen a lot of posts, and I can't work out if they're satire, or if they're real, of people saying that they don't want to celebrate this ceasefire and this moment because, it's got to do with Trump and they don't trust it. But my frustration around all of this is that I feel like we are so cynical now that when we do actually see some good news, we won't enjoy it. We won't allow ourselves to enjoy it.
Yeah, you're right, and especially because it's attached to Trump. These people are just they're so bitter, and the Trump derangement syndrome is so strong. Let's not forget that in his first term as president, Trump moved the American embassy out of Tel Aviv and into Jerusalem. And that was something that, previously it was said, if you try and do that, it'll spark World War III. Well, nobody dared. Nobody did a thing, right, when he did that. And it's a little bit the same here, where before he became president the first time, I wrote a blog post after he'd been elected, but before he'd become president. And I sort of said, look, he's going to be economically very mixed bag. He'll be good for deregulation. He'll be bad for protectionism and this and that. And broadly speaking, I got most things pretty well right. On foreign policy, I said this actually may be one of his strongest areas. It's the area where people said he can't be trusted. He's going to start World War III. He's too unpredictable. He's this, he's that. The truth is he's someone to be feared, and the unpredictability is a part of that. And he talks about this in The Art of the Deal, where if you walk into a room and the other party knows that all options are on the table for you, that strikes a level of fear into them. There's the unpredictability is actually valuable. And the same is true in global geopolitics. He set foot in North Korea as an American president. Things normalized with China, things normalized with Russia. The Middle East went really quiet, even when he moved the embassy. Everyone went, oh, well, let's just maybe not start any trouble while he's in the White House. And then, of course, surprise, surprise, when Biden was in the White House, things started to pick back up again. We saw the Ukraine war break out, and then we also saw this most recent advent of hostilities in the Middle East as well. So I think the Trump has a stabilizing effect because of his unpredictability. This is the thing.
Yeah.
And the Trump haters do not want to give him any credit at all.
Yeah.
What was really interesting, you saw all the nonsense around the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize just for what he's achieved in the Middle East yet. I think he should be eligible for the next one next year if this sticks, if this holds, and he's able to actually hold this together, and we see, at least a lasting, at least for a year, settlement. Then I think at that point, yeah, you'd definitely be putting him forward for it. But I love the fact that he had been what was the lady's name who won it? She was a Venezuela activist whose name escapes me just to the minute. But Trump had actually been supporting her. He'd been tweeting about her in person by name previously. And when she won, she simply turned around and gave him credit and thanked him by name, which to me is just a beautiful irony that they tried to avoid him. They didn't want to give it to him. And so he got credit anyway from the lady that they gave it to. It is amazing to watch people have to have that bitter kind of set in their jaw because it's Trump. We can't give him any credit.
Yeah. And again, like when it comes to Trump and, the TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, it's gotten to a point where they don't want solutions. They don't want resolutions. No. What they want is to find everything perceivable to be wrong, evil, against their ideology, because unfortunately, that's how they live these days. This is what they platform. This is what they need. The left is only happy when they have an enemy, and Trump is the ultimate enemy. And his unpredictability makes him the best enemy because he just has to open his mouth, and they've got fodder for a week. So it's been interesting to watch. Like, I'm not too sure if a lot of the posts I've been seeing as satirical or not, or if there's malice in them. But there does seem to be a consensus here from the left that this is not enough. This is not what they're happy about. And even yesterday, we saw multiple protests. London had estimations of 500,000 people. I'm not too sure if that's true or not. In Melbourne, we had protests. It seems like these people have become professional protests, and that's all they want to do. And no amount of, a peace treaty will ever satisfy them because it'll never be on their terms. It'll never be done the way they wanted. It won't be sufficient. And, at the end of the day, we hear calls for a ceasefire. We hear calls for a truce. We want the war to stop. Well, today it has. For today. I'm not saying it will continue.
At least for the time being. Yep.
But can we have a moment to celebrate that today something monumental has shifted, and maybe it's not by the people you would have preferred to negotiate it, but for Gazans today, it's peace, right?
Yeah. And this is where for a lot of people, it's about the principle. Sorry, it's about the person, not about the principle. But can I reflect on what you said there, where there are people who don't want a lasting peace? That's actually true of almost all advocacy organizations. They don't actually want the problem to be solved. The professional Indigenous industry that live in mansions on the waterfront in Sydney, as opposed to the real, Indigenous people living in remote communities, the ones that are profiting from it, they don't want inequality to be solved. They don't want poverty and crime in remote communities to be solved. The climate change carpetbaggers, they don't want climate change to be fixed. They don't want a solution. The ones that are making hundreds of millions of dollars off the reef is dying. The reef is dying. The last thing they want is for everyone to be aware that the last 5 years running have been the best 5 years in terms of coral cover since we started keeping detailed records on the reef. Like, if the problem goes away, the money stops flowing. And for a lot of these organizations, whether we like it or not, they have made a lot of money out of this Middle East war. And I'm sorry to, there are people who are that cynical. For as long as this war keeps going, for as long as the killing continues, they can profit out of saying, oh, those poor innocent civilians, because they don't actually care. That's the truth of a lot of them. Not all of them. There are ones that do genuinely care. But amongst them, there are a lot of people, and these people tend to end up in pretty powerful positions within these organizations because they're worth a lot of money. There are a lot of people who would much rather the killing continued, because that way the donations keep coming in.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these, progressive types, this is their whole personality. If they're no longer
Yeah,
about Palestine, well, what do they move to next? I mean, we've done
yeah,
the Ukraine, we've done the LGBT,
yep,
we've done the trans, we've done
yep,
the Aboriginal.
yep,
Now we're doing the Gaza. Like, what's next?
yeah,
What's your new enemy? And
yeah.
do you know what I find funny? This is just a little an aside, a tangent, if you might. But go do it.
Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time. Thanks for
um,
the showgirl moves there.
That's all I got because I ain't singing on camera. But I'll shake my boobs though. Like the Jezebel that I am.
Yeah, yes, there we go.
So what I wanted to point out, like with the pro-Palestine movement, for the last 2 years, sorry, I have a dog throwing a toy at my foot.
Okay.
And
If you're going to talk about a dog throwing a toy at your foot, can we just? I need to know. Have you let G out of the kitchen this week? Because
yes, because this is what I baked this morning.
wow, that does look nice. That is nice. You sent me home.
G has the day off.
You sent me home with a loaf of home baked sourdough last week after we recorded in the studio, and I got to say it did not last long. It was very filling, and we were all walking around with very full bellies, but it did not last for very long.
Yes, it is delicious, and so G has the night off. Like I say, right-wing extremism tastes delicious.
Tastes delicious, doesn't it?
Before I got distracted by my dog throwing the toy at me, she's still under there. What was I going to say? Oh, Palestine. Sorry. This is why we call it the Oddcast, because you just never know what's going to happen, right?
Yes.
Indeed. Aspen, go away. Sorry. Anyway, I'm professional. I am professional. I do not want to insult journalism.
Keep telling yourself that.
With the pro-Palestine movement, we've seen a whole, even though these people consider themselves to be socialist and anti-late stage capitalist, what they have done is built a whole network of community around the pro-Palestine movement and, of course, commodified it, right? Yeah. So every week there is some kind of event, protest, market stall, occasion for pro-Palestine, right? Do it for Gaza. And obviously they have also adopted the watermelon as their symbol for the cause, right? So now you've got watermelon earrings, watermelon necklaces, watermelon t-shirts, watermelon everything. And like
is that because the green's on the outside and Marxists in the middle? Like is that
well, it's that, and of course the Palestinian flag, right? So the Palestinian flag is the colors of watermelon.
Okay, that does make more sense. I was kind of like, why the watermelon? But okay, that makes more sense.
They did that, I think, because of censorship, or they assumed they were going to be shadow banned and censored, so they adopted the watermelon. But what you've seen is them, and I always say this with capitalism, it is the human default, right? I have this, you have that, let's trade, right? So these guys are like, I want to do this for Gaza, so I'm going to make products that are pro-Palestinian that you can buy and I profit off, and I'm going to give a portion of those funds over to Gaza, which, whether or not they did or didn't is yet to be seen. But I do find it really interesting. So when we have a look at the left, right, and particularly in Melbourne, I'm kind of generalizing here, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. The Brunswick, Fitzroy types, who are, look exactly as you'd expect them to, probably smell the same way too. They're wearing watermelons, watermelon earrings, necklaces, whatever. If the war in Palestine's over and this is truly a peace deal for now, what do they do? How do they dress? Their uniform no longer makes sense. And they don't have a new movement to start to latch onto. They're like barnacles. And the next whale hasn't swum across from them yet. So this is why they don't want to be happy today.
So you remember during COVID when it just felt like things were just happening one on top of the other. The Ukraine war had started during COVID, and I think there was something else as well. And people began posting pictures. It was this little cartoon sketch of a couple of aliens, and one of them was going, "Oh fuck, we're up next. I'm so nervous." And it was like it was just that thing of what's the next thing? This is just absurd now. Now at that time it felt like everything was coming at us, whereas now it is actually a case of what's their next personality? What's their next identity? Because they can't be without one for too long. just going to jump into a couple of super chats here so we don't get as far behind as we have in the past. So I want to try and stay on top of the super chats because I want to get to them while they're still relevant to the conversation. So before we move on, I do not believe that this would be happening without Trump proving that he's willing to drop those busters, the bunker busters, like in Iran. He showed he will do it. He will do what it takes. I tend to agree. And that was that particular mission. I said at the time, it was also a very clear message to Russia. Because the Russians would be well aware of the fact that a plane could take off from the US, drop a bomb anywhere inside of Russia without anyone knowing that it was coming until the bomb was falling, and that they would not even see the B-2, let alone be able to shoot it down, and that bomber would circumnavigate the globe if necessary, or being as far north would go around the Arctic and go and land back in the US. Really, like, that was a game-changing mission. The statement that it made was absolutely game-changing, because it means that nowhere in the world is beyond the reach of the US president. Now, that's a terrifying thought. I don't think that's a good thing. I think, the possibility of humankind completely and utterly destroying itself is unfortunately not, you can't completely rule that out. But from a geopolitical standpoint, and from the standpoint of other countries going, maybe I'll just turn the heat down a little bit on my little regional conflict here so that I don't attract too much attention, I think it's definitely had that effect. And yeah, that mission, I think, was a pivotal mission, maybe not in global geopolitics, but certainly it would play in the backs of the minds of anyone who was thinking about, getting up the left nostril of Donald J. Trump. That's for sure.
And I remember this all when he had his first term, right? And he was talking about North Korea and having negotiations with Kim Jong, is it Un? I forget which one we're up to. And they were saying that, he's going to lead us to World War III with North Korea. And that unpredictability is actually one of Trump's best negotiating assets. And if anyone has read The Art of the Deal, I know I've made this point before, but Trump literally plays it out in that book. He explains his negotiation tactics and the way he does it. He's like, I'm going to do this, and threatens them with that. And then people go, oh, shit, he might be crazy enough to do it. And then does the opposite. So I think when it comes to a superpower like the USA, having someone like Trump at the helm is actually really good, given how politically hostile we are at the moment, particularly when we talk about nuclear weapons, particularly when we're talking about peace treaties with a millennia-old conflict. Like, I don't know who else is better to do it. Biden certainly wasn't the one.
Yeah. And Joe, you're right. In reality, it doesn't matter who does it. What matters is that it's been done. But sadly, some groups need the military-industrial complex. Sadly, I don't see that ever changing. Oh, hello, puppy. It's a popsicle.
For whoever asked me to show her before, go away.
And Joe, you're right. I don't see the military. I don't see the need for the military-industrial complex changing anytime soon. And it was Dwight Eisenhower. So he was head of one of the theaters, or it might have actually been head of all the U.S. forces towards the end of the Second World War. And he ended up also becoming a president. So he'd seen both of those sides. He was presiding over an entire theater of war with all of the casualties and responsibilities and everything that come with that. And then he was also a U.S. president. In his farewell address, fairly famous, I'm sure many of you will have heard of this before, he explicitly warned against the rising military-industrial complex, because this went beyond just a standing army. This was something that reached across into the civilian side of things and created this symbiotic relationship where they needed there to be war in order to get the funding from the government to keep developing weapons. And the government needed the weapons to be constantly developed so that they had their geopolitical leverage, which meant that on both sides, they had an incentive for there to be war. Both sides of that cycle want war. They want conflict. They want to be able to test and prove and develop weapons, and they want to have budget to be able to turn over massive profits. So unfortunately, what Dwight Eisenhower warned against has exactly happened. It's exactly come true. That is an area where Trump is not going to be winding it back. If anything, he's increased the spending. He's pressured the EU through his trade negotiations into spending a bunch of money with the American military-industrial complex as well. So this is not a problem that's going to be going away anytime soon. Having said that, the Pax Americana, the peace of America that we have lived under, and people scoff when I say this. Every time I say this, people get at me in the comments of any video where I bring this up. The reality is that since the end of World War II, we have lived in a historically extraordinarily peaceful time. despite the wars that have happened. I'm not dismissing the suffering and the wars that have happened. I'm just saying that in the global context of history, it's been actually a remarkably peaceful 70, 80 years. And that's true whether you like it or not. And that's happened largely because there was an undisputed big dog that happened to be America, not Russia or China or World War II Germany or North Korea or any of these other, or the Middle East, the Ayatollah of Iran. If we had an undisputed big dog and it was more of that character, then you can guarantee the last 70, 80 years would not have gone the way they have. So we've been historically incredibly fortunate. But yeah, unfortunately, how much longer does that remain the case? Will America forever be a force for good? I hope so, but it's not a guarantee that they will be. And with a military their size, if they ever change character to the point that they become a force for evil, and arguably you could say that they are with technology and surveillance and the state beginning to act more and more against its own citizens, who knows what comes? So yeah, Joe, I agree.
Yeah, look, and what's frustrating with the military industrial complex is you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't have that, like Australia at the moment, right? Like Pete Hegseth has come out saying that Australia needs to increase its defense spend, and Albanese's blatantly said no. So that means we are completely sorry.
Did you see though that Albanese has come out and said that other countries in the region need to improve their defense capability? I thought about doing a video on this because the hypocrisy is just so
I didn't see that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, and I've got to go back and find the exact quote. Albanese came out with some sort of a comment basically saying that regional partners throughout sort of the Asia Pacific need to increase defense spending. I think it was sort of aimed at a lot of the island chains, your Philippines and, Vietnam and Cambodia and perhaps even India with regard to counterbalancing China. But I just sat there and thought, wow, the height of this man to chide other countries for their defense spending when we are not pulling our weight.
Well, we spend more on NDIS than we do on defense, which kind of tells you where our priorities lie. But what makes me quite concerned is it's great that America is our ally until we have people like Kevin Rudd and Penny Wong and Albanese who aren't doing their best to maintain relationships with the US. What are you smiling about?
This is almost certainly not true, and it's almost certainly not happening, but how good would it be? There is a rumor, which I will say again is almost certainly not true, that Mel Gibson is going to be appointed the ambassador to the United States.
Can you imagine?
I my doubt cap is on. I am 99.5% doubt on that one. But how good would it be if Kevin Rudd got the flick and Mel Gibson was put in his place?
I love Mel Gibson. And the more I've listened to him recently, the more I'm like, you are a dying breed. Him, Tim Allen, and a host of others, Sylvester Stallone, John Voight, Kevin Sorbo, proper leading Hollywood men, right?
Yeah.
But Wong is a rough looking dude. Sorry, I was reading the comment. So, you
Never
look
read
at the way.
Comments.
No, this is a problem. I get distracted and then I'm like, what's going on? Sorry. Okay. Looking the way Kevin Rudd behaves and some of the things he's been doing whilst living in America is just an embarrassment. And Albanese speaking on a global stage, it's an embarrassment. And so when we don't have the defense spending that obviously we're never going to have the same as the US. We don't have the same.
And nor should we. Yeah.
But when we're lacking in any way to sort of protect our borders, and we've got someone like Albo who just doesn't seem to think it's a consideration, we are quite dependent on the US, and as such, we're so dependent on our relationship with the US. And it seems like Australians at the moment are just so happy to piss the US off. And at what cost to buddy up to China? And if Dan Andrews had his way, that's exactly what we would be doing. I find it really interesting because, at the core of this is what values do we still adhere to? In Australia, what values do we find that we want to align ourselves with? We used to be someone that was, typically Judeo-Christian value systems. Now it seems like we're, completely enamored with Marxist ideology. We're moving far and far more progressive. So are we going to see this shift where Australia, under its current leadership, is going to start aligning with more Marxist ideology and therefore saddling up to China? That's what it looks like.
I think Australia is actually headed for a bit of a reset, a good one, not the great reset, a good reset. And I think that's going to come in the form of the Liberal Party finally rejecting net zero. They have to get rid of Susan Lee. And I think the people that know, there are people within the Liberal Party and power brokers within the Liberal Party that know that this has to happen. But they also know that if they do it too far before the next election, then so there's a thing that happens when you change leader where that person kind of gets an automatic sort of a benefit of the doubt popularity bump, and they want to still be riding that when the next election happens. And if they change leaders now, that will have worn off, and that they will lose that potential advantage. So they want to wait a little while longer. But there are people that know that it needs to happen, and I think before the next election, this isn't a prediction. This is my gut. I think it's more likely than not that we will see the Liberal Party reject net zero, get rid of Susan Lee as the leader, and go into the next election with a really strong anti-net zero stance and actually giving us a real choice. If the Australian people at that point do switch to the Liberal Party, then we may see ourselves. Sorry about that, G. I do apologise. They're not leadership. They're a government. They're our masters, not our leaders. I do think that Australia, I think there's a lot of hope still there. If the Liberal Party don't get to the point where they reject net zero before the next election, then I think there's still hope, but it fades over time. The worst possible outcome is that the Liberal Party reject net zero, get rid of Susan Lee, Andrew Hastie or one of these other people comes in as the leader into the next election and then doesn't get up. At that point, we are looking at a full-blown Venezuela situation.
Drink. I was trying to find this article. So Redbridge Cosamaris has come out with a new poll showing that an overwhelming portion of the younger generation are leaning left towards Greens and Labor. And if I were a Liberal Party strategist, the first thing I'd be saying is, how the hell do we start talking to Gen Z? Like them or not, they are a huge chunk of the voting bloc. And unfortunately, go. What are you going to say? You're
right. But the mistake they make at the strategic level is they say they're going left, so we have to chase them left. We've got to talk down to that age group and we've got to chase them left. What they actually need to have the guts to do for a change, because this is what's been wrong with them for the last number of elections, what they actually have to have the guts to do is, yes, adjust their messaging so that it connects with that age demographic, but actually stand firm on their principles where they ought to be, which is on that more conservative free market, right, so to speak, and actually stand there and say, hey, everybody, this is better, and we're going to take the time to communicate why. But the strategists don't usually have the guts for that. And the Susan Lees of this world, they chase the middle, they chase the votes where they think they are, rather than actually standing firm on their principles. But young people, we've talked about this a lot before, young people are looking for principles. They're looking for someone that actually says, hey, we've got some solutions for you. Right now, anytime the Liberal Party go chasing that left vote, they just keep losing even more because they're not offering any kind of alternative. If we're going to go that way, we might as well go all the way that way. Give us an actual alternative here. I do want to pick up on something that you said earlier about Kevin Rudd before we go all the way down this. This is an interactive question. Everyone get your keyboards ready because it has been confirmed apparently that Anthony Albanese is going to get his much beloved meeting with Donald J. Trump. But I think he's going to regret that decision because he's been given a public meeting with press in the White House. That's what Donald Trump does when he's going to roast you to your face. That's what he did with Keir Starmer when they had their little tiff about freedom of speech in the UK. That's what he just did to Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. And Trump sat there and talked about transgender issues and having men in women's bathrooms right in front of Mark Carney, who has a child who is transgender. This is what he does in order to embarrass you on the world stage. It's one of his power moves. So my question to our audience is, what do you think Trump has in store for Anthony Albanese to spring on him whilst he's sitting there in front of the world's media with eyes wide open like a deer in the headlights? What do you reckon? Tell us, give us your best guess in the comments.
I'm reading the comments here. I can't wait to see this. Can you imagine? I think Albanese is quite short too. Is that right? Albanese is under 6'4".
Sure. I don't actually know.
I think he is. And Trump's about 6'3" or 6'2". So already it's just like the positioning, right? And you know the old Trump handshake. Just
Oh, yeah.
watching this weedy looking, I grew up in a commission home with a single mom.
I wonder if he'll tell Trump that story, and Trump would be like, "I grew up with a gold-plated toilet."
Yeah. And you know what? I love that about Trump. I love that he is making the Oval Office look gaudy because he's so unapologetically himself. That's what I love
Yeah.
about Trump. He is so authentically him. And that bothers a lot of people. They don't like him, right? But I think anyone who will unabashedly be themselves and show up as themselves on the world stage is someone who is fit to be a leader. Because so few
Yeah.
people actually show up as themselves. As soon as there's a little bit of public pressure, a little bit of pushback, a little bit of criticism, people crumble. So that's actually part of Trump that I love. Do you reckon it's the Karen? Let's read in the comments.
I do think that's going to come up because that is a brewing feud. Anyone that follows my channel, you'll know that I'm watching all of that very closely. I think the Karen has made her bed and she's going to regret it. She's picked a fight with the US president, not directly yet, but via the big American tech companies. So the way that's going to work for anyone that doesn't follow my videos, on the 10th of December, the age verification comes in. The legislation is very loosely written. People just have to, or the tech companies just have to take reasonable steps, which means there's going to be different definitions of what that means. The tech companies are going to do what they say is reasonable. The Karen's going to say, that's not enough. And they're going to say, well, we think it is. Sue us. And she's stupid enough. She will sue them. X, Meta, and Alphabet. She's going to end up in lawsuits with a whole lot of them because they're going to stand their ground because they know that Trump has their back. He's proved that with the UK trying to break Apple's encryption. He's proved that in a couple of different ways now. And that is going to end up involving JD Vance. It's going to end up involving Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, because and I know this is not a prediction. This is a statement of fact. If the Karen sues the big American tech companies, Marco Rubio will personally get involved. He said through one of the official Twitter channels for the Department of State that they are going to be using international diplomacy and their diplomatic efforts for the protection of fundamental freedoms. And he listed Australia. He listed 3 countries that were violating fundamental freedoms. And one of the ones that he listed was Australia. And it was because of the case of, I think it was the Billboard Chris case was the one that he mentioned, but he mentions a specific case. So out of all of the countries in the world, 3 get called out by the US Secretary of State for human rights violations in relation to fundamental freedoms. One of them is Australia. If the Karen is dumb enough to actually try and sue X, Meta, or Alphabet over our under 16 age restrictions ban, I promise you, Marco Rubio will be in like Flynn. He's already licking his lips. He's looking forward to it. JD Vance won't be far behind. And the Karen will deeply regret her decision to pick a fight.
Yeah, and as we said on last Wednesday's podcast, she needs to be shamed and humiliated out of office. That's the best way to deal with her. Anyone who has such ambition like that, to think that, Australia can take on these big global tech companies and decide what can be seen on global platforms is outrageous. And that's your typical Silicon Valley white woman too, by the way. Have you seen, this is another tangent, have you seen that Democrat politician Katie something that's going up against to take over from Gavin Newsom? Have you seen the absolute hysteria around her? She is the most unlikable, nasty Karen. Like if Karen looked like a person, it would be this person. And she's basically been outed as this super disagreeable, nasty, treats her staff terribly. Guys, if you know who I'm talking about, it's Katie. Is it Burgess or Katie something, right? I think Katie's one of our followers. Oops, sorry.
Not Katie Burgess. She's been following me for years. Don't insult her.
I was going to say. I just said the wrong one. I was like, Katie Burgess? No.
No.
She's a politician who's basically been ousted and shown to be a Katie Porter. There you go. And so this is what the left have. These are the kind of women that are in the left, and it's indicative of who Karen is as well. They feel like they're going to get their way. they're trying to bulldoze their way through every. Sorry, Katie. How dare you?
We owe you an apology, Katie.
And that's the ego of these women, right? So Karen would have been, a bit of a powerhouse in Silicon Valley, thinking, "Oh, I've got this. I can do anything I want." And now they're finding out that no, actually, you can't, because we have these things called, checks and balances, and your ego is not one of them. So. You're famous, Katie Burgess. Sorry, Katie, I feel terrible.
For all the wrong reasons.
Katie Porter. Right. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen that story, go and look it up. She's insufferable to watch.
All right. Now we need to get you to your polling, but before we do that, I want to dive through a couple more super chats here. So we're talking earlier about what's the next thing that people are going to attach their identity to. Found Hope says the next thing is immigrants, legal and illegal. It's nebulous, perfectly ill-defined, just like the war on terror. Well, that's an interesting one, because I can't come out against immigration. They've very much nailed their flag to that particular mast. So they have to be pro-immigration. I don't see that. I don't see that blowing up massively, because the general zeitgeist across Australia is anti-immigration. And so that's, interesting, Found Hope. Interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
Just on the immigration thing, and, there was that whole August 31st protest conversation. It's now really blossomed into a very healthy, robust conversation where people are arguing the pros and cons. And for the most part, the sentiment is that most Australians are pro-immigration, just not in this huge number that we're currently taking in. And that runs with the sentiment that I've been talking about since we started having this conversation, that no one is racist in saying that we don't want huge amounts of people coming in, whilst things in Australia aren't good for actual Australians. We need to start taking care of what's here. We need to take care of the housing crisis. We need to take care of the people who are struggling under the cost of living. And then once we've got things sort of like ducks lined up in a row, we can start looking at taking people in. But the problem is, a lot of it's, a lot of these student visas, for example, are to prop up our universities. This is and that is the Marxist production line, right? So if our universities are operating at full speed, we can't be churning out Marxists who are going to become Labor or Greens voters. So they need the migrants, they need the Indian students, and so it's this horrible cyclical thing. But judging by the comments on socials, seeing what's happening on X, and a lot of conversations, people are now realizing that this is a huge issue. And even on those little things that we saw, that story that we talked about on Wednesday, where the Indians after the festival were dumping their rubbish in the waterways. These little things, like, they might seem isolated now, but it's starting to piss off people on a community level. So these little things, and also obviously Sudanese youth crime, there's a lot of things that seem like little grass fires, and it's now getting the conversation back to the bigger topic, which is mass immigration into Australia. So I'm encouraged by this.
Look, I'm very much in the minority, because my position, as I've said before, but for anyone that's new, if we fix the incentives, everything fixes itself. And the threat for me is that view that you've expressed of, well, let's fix all of these things first, and then we'll come back to the immigration issue. If immigration is the pain point, or if immigration is the thing that everyone's blaming, then if you stop the immigration, even just temporarily for a while to give everything else a breather, a lot of people are going to stop being activists. They're going to go, oh, good, we fixed that problem. No, you haven't. All of the problems remain, because the problems, as I've gone through in my videos, the problems aren't caused by immigration. They might be exacerbated by immigration, but absolutely everything, including the housing shortage, we would be saying there's a housing shortage and a housing affordability crisis, even without immigration, because it's come from other much more fundamental structural issues with the way we do regulation and taxation and everything else on housing. So for me, I kind of throw my hands up in the air a little bit. I'm like, ugh. It feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't debate from my point of view. I just want people to focus on the problem, make the problem, rather than focusing on one of the things that, yes, admittedly is exacerbating some of the problems, but not as much as people think. But ultimately, you could fix immigration, and all we would end up with is a white ghetto. Australia is on the road to becoming a ghetto, and people who are arguing over immigration are arguing over, should it be a white ghetto or a mixed race ghetto? To me, that seems like the wrong debate, but
I get your point, but also, I mean, I've said this from the outset, this is where we disagree. I do believe there is a cultural issue here where we're importing people who don't want to assimilate and deliberately don't want to assimilate. I am pro people coming here. Like, I've said this point 100 times, but for those who might have not heard it before, when we had the Greeks, the Vietnamese, the Chinese all come over here. I mean, Australia is a collection of immigrants. That's how our country was founded. And to be honest, the Aboriginals weren't originally here either. So we're all migrants.
No, that's
We're
right.
all come here from other places, which is great.
They killed off, at a minimum, they killed off the pygmies that beat them here, quite possibly in something resembling a genocide. But that's not a very politically politically correct thing to say.
Yeah. And look, so I'm pro migration in the sense that if we can incentivize good people who want to come here and build up the Australian economy and contribute to our culture, then fantastic. Yeah. That's my stance on migration. Yeah. And I don't care who those people are, so long as there's a merit system. These are people who actually want to contribute. If we're inviting people here because the government's incentivize them because they come and get free things and free housing and money from the 100%. Government, that boils my fucking blood. Sorry, that's my first swear word for the podcast.
There you go.
Oops, I was
drop the F-bomb. And that's where we do agree. Fix the incentives and you fix the problem. See, if we actually get the incentives right, the wrong people aren't going to want to come here. The reason the wrong people want to come here is because easy money, easy healthcare, all the rest of it. However, let's just smash through a few more comments before we then get to the Costa Samaras polling. Joe Cameron, to my last comment, the amount of amazing medical and technological innovations with military funding have been amazing, i.e. the internet. I agree, but also, Joe, the flip side of that is how much more amazing would the world have become if we hadn't wasted billions and trillions of dollars and millions of lives killing each other. That's kind of the flip side. Yes, there have been some silver linings out of the fact that we have a habit of killing each other, and I agree with that. But I still have to feel like that's a what do you call it? A participation award. That's not the main prize. We would have had much better had we managed to figure out how to not kill each other. Found Hope says, I'm not as think as you drunk I am. I am absolutely February. Yes. I think you're getting your merds wixed, Found Hope, which can be very confusing, but it's not as bad as getting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. All right. Joe Cameron again. Joe, busy night. How about Hasty becomes the head of the opposition and then maybe bind with One Nation? So then at least there might be more representation before everyone leaves here. Say this having lived here for 28 years. Look, One Nation are the reason why people like Hasty have a chance to actually take over the Liberal Party. People have said to me, and Carly, you've been on stage with me at times when people have asked this question, about, should I join and support a minor party or a major party? And my answer is yes. Because if you're asking that question, it means that you haven't joined one yet. Pick one and join it. And people say, oh, but which one's going to work? Well, joining the Liberals is not going to work unless One Nation are strong. And I would say the Libertarians as well. But at the moment, they don't have that kind of traction. One Nation are the ones with the traction. One Nation getting stronger adds leverage to the good people that do exist within the Liberal Party. But then they still need grassroots members within the Liberal Party to also push that forward. So it's both. If you're asking, which one should I join? The answer is yes. Just pick one and join it. So I don't see them binding, Joe. I don't see them officially joining forces, except potentially in a hung Senate where One Nation would guarantee supply to the Liberals, although it's not actually impossible with where they're at now. It's not impossible for One Nation to start picking up lower house seats. So something of a coalition could, I would call that a really long shot, but it's not out of the question. But Joe, I'm actually, I'm still in Australia. I had the option to leave. I left Victoria and went through all the trouble of that. We thought about leaving. At one point, we thought we probably were going to leave, and then we've decided not to. We're still here, and I am optimistic about the future of Australia. I think we've got 4 or 5 really rough years to get through, but I'm optimistic.
I was on a podcast last night, Commanding the Narrative. I think you've talked to Stephen before.
Not sure, actually. Yeah.
He did mention you, so I think you guys have chatted. But he was talking about how he'd love to see Hasty, Price, Antic all come together and form a new party, a bit like Nigel Farage has done in the UK. I don't know if that can happen here. I don't think Australia has the desire for that. We are
No.
very much a two-party system. It's a bit like saying that, in America, they're going to start a third party like the Elon Musk America Party. It just won't get off the ground.
No.
I understand the sentiment, but I do think it's a matter of infiltrating the Liberals and getting the right people back in there.
I agree, with the added caveat of having someone outflanking them, adding to the pressure. And that's what One Nation are doing for us right now. Now, this is a new one to me. So insert username has said, have you seen 4chan's response to the UK government trying to silence free speech by fining them $20,000 a day? I know nothing about this. Carly, has this crossed your desk?
No. Look, to be honest, 4chan's not a corner of the internet I familiarize myself with. I know enough about it by proxy, but no, sorry, I'm not across that one.
Yeah, sorry, ditto. If you want to send through any links or anything for me to try to familiarize myself, but yeah, probably not something we're going to cover in this podcast because neither of us actually knows anything about it. This is not investment advice, but I can think of worse things to do with my money. I'm going to buy shares in Popcorn for the E-Karen showdown and the Trump elbow meeting. Yes, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Do I owe Daniel a thank you? Is it Daniel that hooked me up last week?
You do, but we were going to do a ceremonial exchange on Wednesday's podcast.
Okay.
And pretend that I didn't do it last week, and then we completely forgot to include it in the podcast. So we're gonna do it again for the cameras on Wednesday. So hold fire on that. But yes, that is the Daniel to whom you do owe a thank you. Absolutely. This one. So Joe says, this control will end up being the embryo in a human who hatches in another country. I didn't realize we were it. Wonder how many questions she had to the UK person in charge. Sorry, Joe, you've thrown me there. Carly, have you got that one?
I'm not sure I understand that. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't want to assume.
No. That's all right. We're going to move on. There's two more, and then we're back to the polling. Albo is actually closing the gap, though. We will all be living in the bush on benefits with unmatched thongs soon. You're absolutely right.
What was that poll that came out that showed that Australia of the OEC countries was the only one that had declined in disposable income?
Yeah, and with a massive decline. I'm not sure, depending on which time period you look at, there was another time period where there was another country that had declined, but it was like this, and then the bar graph of decline for Australia was like that. It's bad.
We were looking at the graph last night, and the decline is literally like fallen off a cliff. And I know you guys in the chat, we've all talked about this, but for those who have just joined us tonight, the sentiment is that it doesn't matter what you're earning, your disposable cash has basically gone dry. And you're seeing this because of so many different pressures, whether it's, utilities, it's groceries, it's tax. It is getting to the point now. And look, I don't want Australians to suffer. Let me just preface it with that. I don't want to see us suffer, but I do believe that a little bit of suffering is going to, for lack of a better word, wake more people up. And you are seeing that now. And I know we talk about Victoria all the time, and most people are like, Victoria's doomed. We are now getting to a point where people of influence are really speaking up. And we'll get into the youth crimes stuff in a second, but a mainstream media veteran, what's his name? Peter Ford, right?
He's moving out of Melbourne.
He's moving out of Melbourne. Now, Peter Ford, for those of you who don't know who this is, he's always been the celebrity whisperer, they call him. He's the guy like the Richard Wilkins who did all the interviews with the celebrities. And he's been on TV for, 30 years.
Long time,
For him to come out and say that it's so bad in Melbourne, I am leaving, is insane. That is career suicide to a degree, or it would have been 3 years ago. So the sentiment is definitely shifting, and it's because everyone's feeling it, everyone's suffering. And that's what I feel like, even though it's not a good thing, and again, I don't like seeing people suffer, but I think the cost of living and the extra tax and, the idea of unrealized gains, all of that is making people going, hang on a minute, whoa, this is not what I voted for,
So there's big news on unrealized gains, but we need to put a pin in that for later on. Let's not finish until we've talked about unrealized gains.
I feel like we'll do that Wednesday because it's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. All right, one more. And then, Joe, your most recent comment, we're going to wait because I keep on making Carly wait. But one more. A quick little theology discussion. Lady Patience says, Topher, the other day it sounded like you said Jesus was created. Can you please briefly confirm what you believe around Jesus and the Trinity? Very, very simple. Jesus is described as the only begotten Son. So the Bible describes the Trinity as God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. A son, by definition, proceeds from a father. So if the word begotten is literally to give birth to, it is created in the most intimate sense. So God the Father created God the Son. Now, whether that was a part of himself that he defined and separated differently, I'm not sure. That's a process that I can't describe to you, but the scripture says God the Father begot God the Son. Now, Jesus is the only begotten Son. Nothing else was created directly by God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And by him all things are and were created. So Jesus Christ, the Word of God, was the begotten Son. It was through Jesus that the rest of creation was created. So the only thing, well, the Holy Spirit, there's less about that in Scripture, so I don't know. But Jesus is described in the Bible as the only begotten Son of God. And we know from the way that it's described that everything else was created actually by Jesus through the Word of God, which is Jesus. So, yeah, that's how I understand all of that. Jesus was created not in the same sense that we're created, right? Jesus was created by God the Father. We were created by God the Son, by Jesus, who is the Word. So I don't know if that helps or hinders, but that's my answer to that. Okay, Kos Samaras and political polling. Tell you what, this is a show where we're jumping around.
It is, isn't it? We're all over the place, but don't say you're not entertained. Hang on, don't press the wrong button. Hang on. There we go. Perfect. All right, so this is a poll. So Redbridge is fairly accurate, and just because we don't like what they poll doesn't mean it's not true. So I need to make this bigger so I can read it myself. So this has come out, and I'll just read Cos's comment really quickly. The call for a coalition right turn may end up being the longest U-turn away from government. So just so everyone's aware, Kos Samaras is a Labor diehard, but his polling is fairly accurate. I don't necessarily agree with his sentiments, but essentially what he's saying here is that as the coalition starts to lean more right, i.e. abandon net zero, it might take them a generation to get back in government with that sentiment, showing that, Gen Z and the younger voters are leaning far more left than generations above them. So he's saying basically that the age profile of each major party tells a story. The Greens' median age is early 30s. Labor is early 40s. The coalition is mid-50s, and One Nation is early 60s. And that kind of runs with that. I always attribute this to Churchill, but I don't think it was actually Churchill that said, in your youth, you are left. In your maturity, you lean right. I can't remember what the actual quote is.
If you're not a socialist when you are young, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative when you are old, you have no brains.
Is that actually Churchill? I don't think
I don't know whether he ever said it or not, but something approximating what I just said is the quote that is attributed to him, but I've no idea if it's true.
It's probably Plato or Aristotle, or Einstein. One of the few.
I doubt that they were discussing in those terms, but hey, I've been proven wrong before. Jump in the comments.
That's the throwaway sentiment. If you've got a quote, you don't know who it's attributed to. You just attribute it to the big three. It's Aristotle said this, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But so this is kind of, looking at this polling here, it shows that, there is a strong contingent of Gen Z, particularly women Gen Z, who are leaning further and further progressive. And again, this comes down to a couple of things. One, it's the universities and the school system. Education has been infiltrated by Marxists. This is the ideology. This is the wokeness. We know all that. We've talked about this. But also what it is, and I bring this back to that opening clip where I talked about that guy calling me a Jezebel for swearing, right? This is exactly the sentiment. That alienates people who have a culture that is vastly different to the culture that old mate grew up in. Now, I'm just making assumptions, but it does sound like a boomer thing to say. So old mate who made that comment could be in his 60s, 70s. I don't know. That's an assumption. But let's say he is, right? Gen Z have got 40 to 50 years between those two. There's an entirely different culture. There's an entirely different vocabulary, an entirely different way of communicating. And the problem is a lot of these conservatives or the more right-leaning people are naturally older, and they don't know how to communicate to Gen Z, who feel completely disenfranchised and also have been brought up on the fact that the climate's about to implode, that they'll never own a house, that capitalism's terrible, right?
Yeah.
So what we have here is I'm not shocked by these polls. This makes total sense. You spend a minute on Instagram or TikTok, this is exactly what it looks like. But what I'm frustrated by is our leaders have people like Jacinta Press, like Moira Deeming, like Alex Antic, who are great, and yet they get pushed to the back or get even worse, expelled from their own party for standing up for things that people care about. So, for example, I know I'm jumping all over the point, but I'm trying to make a really clear point here about how out of touch these people are. Moira Deeming, we've talked about this substantially, standing up for women's rights. This is a big one. You have a generation of young sportswomen who are trying to get to the Olympics, who are trying to play in the Australian AFL, whatever they call it, AWFL, whatever it is, right? Who are now getting pushed out of those pole positions by men, right? And I'm going to say that. They're men who pretend to be women. And you've got people on the left saying this is a great thing. Imagine if the Liberal Party went, no, we believe that young women have a right to play in the sports against other women, and this is something that we are going to stand up for. But instead, the Liberal Party expelled Moira Deeming, had her on the side for over a year. She took Prosciutto through defamation, won.
And won.
And the Liberal Party backed him out so he didn't go bankrupt. What message does that send to, firstly, women, secondly, young women? So this is what frustrates me about the Liberal Party. And to bring it back to the guy who made the comment, I'm a young woman. I'm someone who's conservative leaning. I'm someone who's libertarian. I'm on your side of the freaking fence. But rather than celebrate the fact that you have someone like me who could have gone the opposite direction, who could have gone woke, who could have been progressive, because let's face it, I live in quite a sexist industry. But I'm not. I'm someone who's very rational, very commonsensical. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, we have this massive age gap and I speak with some profanity. And because of that, you want to admonish me and make me feel bad and make me feel guilty.
Yeah.
This is why we keep losing. This is my frustration.
So there's a couple of things I want to say as a response to Koss here. Not that he's ever going to hear me, but polling can only show you what people will do with the options they have right now. If you had polled, if you went 1 year before the iPhone was released and did polling, the BlackBerry would have shat all over everybody, right? The people are only going to choose from the options that they're given in a poll. Now, there's also self-selection bias in polls, and there's all that sort of stuff. We've talked about all that before. But ultimately, based on the current choices, I do not blame young people at all for rejecting the Liberal Party for all the reasons that you've just described and so much more. But there are circuit breakers available to the Liberal Party. Now, number one, yes, a lot of that Greens vote will shift away from the Greens as they get older, as they get their first paycheck, as they pay their first taxes, as those things happen. It's no coincidence, by the way, that young people's support for the Greens has increased as people have remained children for longer. People are children into their late 20s now. They're still at university. They're still essentially dependents on government handouts and all the rest of it. Now, not everybody. I'm not having a go at every single uni student, but it's no coincidence that as people get older, as people are able to remain immature for longer, they tend to support the Greens for longer. And it's when they get out into the real world that starts to change. But you've also just got this reality that for a lot of these people, these young, rabid Greens, etc., when they have that epiphany, which not all of them will, but some of them will, when they have that epiphany, the world's not about to end from climate change. We're fine. I've been lied to for, the first 15, 20, 25 years of my life. I've lived in fear. I've lived in despair. I've struggled with mental health and depression because you fed me all of this bullshit. The snapback is going to be really, really savage. So if the Liberal Party can actually turn around and say, hey, the Overton window is now open. We can now go to the polls and say, women only in women's sports, no more net zero. Let's get the cost of living under control by dealing with it at the source rather than throwing more government money at it, which only accelerates the problem. If they can actually turn around and actually stand on something that gives even young people a real alternative, you will immediately see a certain percentage. It won't be a majority, but you will immediately see those bars shift towards the coalition because right now they are giving people no reason There is nothing at all about the Liberal National Party right now that should inspire anyone to want to vote for them. They are trying to be Labor light, and as such, they have no purpose for existing. That can change radically, and Koss and his polls cannot account for what happens when the iPhone gets released, when the new version of the Liberal Party gets released, where they actually find a spine, reject net zero, reject all the woke ideologies, and get back to basics. Koss and his polling cannot account for what happens.
Yeah. Can I give you a little bit of a good news story? And it kind of correlates to what we've been talking about. Like, as you guys would have seen, I've been making those little reels for Instagram. And as soon as I've handed in my thesis, I'm going to try and do bigger videos, kind of like what Topher does. But it's just very time consuming. But I got a really touching message about a week ago from someone who's 18. And they reached out to me, a male too, which is interesting. And said, hey, I found your video on this about youth crime, and I started following you because, you know, like, I know these people. These are people I go to school with committing the crimes. But this video that you made about chicken in the noodle aisle really struck me. And he said, and he goes, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm basically talking about how people walk past the smallest of issues, and then it compounds over time. So this is people walking past misplaced groceries, or even worse, leaving random things in the grocery aisles because it's not their problem and not their job. And we were having a good chat, and he said to me, he's like, I said, you know, I'm really touched that you reached out to me. Thank you so much. And he's like, you know, there's so few people like you who are, you know, our kind of age who are speaking like this. For the most part, on social media, it's more expedient to lean into the progressive stuff because you get rewarded for it, right? And you and I have talked about this Overton window, particularly with COVID. Now there's like a slither, right? Like it's starting to open, and I'm seeing a lot more content like mine start to pop up. And it's really hard, right? I understand for a lot of people, putting yourself out there, creating content can feel difficult. But I think it's really worth it. And we've talked about this before about encouraging other content creators to do whatever it is that you want to do and put yourself out there, because there are a lot of Gen Z or young ones who are thirsty for that kind of content, and they're trying to find it, right? Because a lot of them are abandoning the woke stuff. They're miserable, and they know they're miserable, and they don't want to be miserable. And I think if you offer them an opportunity to, you know, take the red pill or the blue pill, then they go, you know what, I'm going to give this a crack. I want to try this. And so I was really heartened by that. And that sort of like, you know, really put the wind up my sails. Was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to lean into this and try and speak more to the young ones, because they're desperate for leadership.
Yeah. And it is such an important thing. The vast majority of people will decide what they believe based on the range of opinions that they've heard. It is relatively rare that a human being will decide that they believe something that is outside of the window of what they have heard from someone else. It does happen, but that person is a relatively unique intellect. I'm not saying they're always right, but the person that goes, no, actually, I believe this thing over here that's completely outside of anything that anyone has ever said to me before, that is a rare individual. And so just by actually voicing even the basic stuff, this is one of the things that I struggle with, is because I've got new people coming into my audience all the time. What I want to do naturally is to continue a conversation and to dive deeper and become, you know, I assume I have this problem where I assume whenever I write a video that everyone's seen the previous work. They're with me on this, and we can just move on and dive into this particular. And you know, my wife sometimes has to pull me back, and others thankfully pull me back, and they're like, whoa. Someone might have just come across your work for the very first time today, and this video still has to connect with them. And I think that's a really important principle for yourself and for myself. And I think you've got more appeal down into that younger age group. I'm already kind of aging out a little bit, getting a little bit too gray, unfortunately, I think. But I think it's just such an important principle, not talking down, not being condescending, but making sure that everything that we do is actually accessible for that first time listener, the person who's encountering these ideas for the very first time. Because there are a lot of young people that are hungry. They don't know what they're hungry for. They're hungry, and all they're hearing is one thing. But it actually only takes one person. If they've heard that voice just one time, then that can stick in there, and it completely opens up this whole new range of ideas that they might then choose to believe once they're sort of picking what they really do believe.
The other shift I'm seeing as well is like we've infantized these kids for so long. Like, as you've just said, like they're 28, still living at home, and we're still treating them like children. I think it's because we've taken away their agency. We need to tell them how
Yep.
to think. We need to tell them what they're upset about. And
Yeah, yeah.
I talk about agency a lot, and I'm working on a video about this at the moment. But how, you know, the what's it called, the suicidal empathy crowd, the woke types, the progressives, they need to speak on behalf of the marginalized all the time,
Yeah,
and
that's
speak on
right.
behalf
That's
of
right.
the people who might be hoodwinked by people like you and I. And so
Yeah.
these bleeding hearts will go there and go, no, 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 I am the bastion of morality. I am the arbiter of all truth, and I'll tell you how to think, little lady.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that gets really freaking tedious after a point, and these people are sick of being talked down to. But again, what they're looking for is leadership. And, you know, people talk about Andrew Tate and Abby Chatfield and the like. Those people are appealing because they're
Mm.
so jarring to what is currently out there. And that's why, like, you know, your Punters Politics, he's done really well because
Yeah.
it's a new person, a younger person popping
Yeah.
up, and people are hungry for information, and doing
Yeah.
it in a way that's not talking down to them either, and not doing the clappy fans, you know, like the Abby Chatfield, or admonishing them or making them feel
Yeah.
guilty. So everything that the left does comes with a huge side of guilt. And after you watch any of their reels, like you just sort of sit there going, oh
Yeah,
wow, I feel like
you
this is
feel
crap,
you
you
feel
know?
blah afterwards. No, but Punter's a great example because he makes it fun, but without dumbing it, without the condescension, without making it feel like he's dumbing it down for you. But this is such an important thing because there's an enormous number of people in that generation that know something's wrong, and something doesn't fit. The cognitive dissonance is there, but if they can't bring it into consciousness, it's subconsciously like something's wrong about this.
Yeah.
And again, they just have to hear that one person that seeds that idea that they just can't get rid of. You know, there's entire movies and entire sci-fi series have been made around this idea that an idea is impossible to kill. Once it takes root, once that seed takes root, it's impossible to kill. And giving people ideas and sharing that with them. I mean, the hunger is obvious. Just look at the response to Jordan Peterson. Now that's faded out a little bit. He's had the main part of his wave, but the fact that there was a wave for an old white-haired dude to talk about making your bed, right? The fact that there was an audience that flocked to him and started wearing suits. We've seen another wave in the form of in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And again, that will be a wave, and a lot of people will fall away from that wave, but a lot of people won't. A lot of people will forever chart a different trajectory with their life as a result of what happened there. And there's opportunities to create these waves, whether they're big or small, to seed that idea into someone's mind that takes hold and has them go, hey, all of that other stuff I can choose to reject because it doesn't make sense to me. This one thing that I heard that one time, that's what makes sense to me. And that's the power of really what we do.
I want to share this with you. This is funny, right? So this is our generation, the generation under us in a nutshell, right? I stumbled upon this when I was looking at Instagram, but it tied into, guys, ready? 1, 2, 3, masters. And I want to talk about it because we're seeing a renaissance of nostalgia, right? So the 90s, especially 90s and Y2K, because millennials lust after their youth like no one else, right? Millennials are constantly going back to looking at the Backstreet Boys, the Spice Girls, and all the cool tech, you know, like the Nokia phones, the flip phones, CDs, and all of these cultural moments that really sort of basically brought us together as kids, right? And so you look at millennials when they're talking about, oh, when we were clubbing, we did this. And then when we did that, we did this. And I know Gen X do that as well, but Gen X are a little too cool. Gen X are like, yeah, we did things, but we were too cool. And if you didn't see it, you don't get to know about it. Whereas millennials like, we did this thing. It's amazing. Oh my God, it's so good. And I think Gen Z are realizing how much they've missed out on. And so they're wanting to have this renaissance of Y2K, and they're all going back to that era and embracing things. And they're looking at, you know, what they call dumb phones. They're looking at CDs. They're looking at taking a much more analog approach to their life. And I think this is why they look at themselves and they're looking in the mirror, literally and metaphorically speaking, going, what is this that we've been sold? I don't like it. You know?
Can I scare you, Carly?
Oh God, yeah.
What year were you born?
86.
So in 2 years' time, the distance between the end of World War II and your birthday will be less than the distance between your birthday and that day.
Say that again.
Now, I'm for you, it's another 2 years away. For me, it's already happened. My birthday is closer to the end of World War II than it is to today. I've been alive for more than half of the time that has passed since the end of World War II. And can you bring that little graph up again? Because I just want to really depress you. So you were born in the mid 80s. So that 50s to 60s was only 35 years or so before then. 25 to 35 years before you were born. Today is 39 years since you were born. So your birthday was closer to that top picture than it is to today. Do you feel old?
No. Oh, I don't care about age. I'm so unfazed. I am so like, you know how people freak out about turning 40? I'm like, yay. Like, I don't care. I don't know. I don't understand the age thing. I don't understand why women lie about their age. It's weird. I don't know. I don't get it.
So the only one that got me was when I realized I was closer to 30 than I was to 25. So somewhere like 27 and a half ish is a bit past there. Yeah. And I don't know why. I just woke up one day and my brain went, you're closer to being 30 than to 25. And that had me a little bit rattled for like a day. But that's the only time it's ever really bothered me.
Do you know what I find weird about turning 40? And I can't remember if we've had this conversation before. Is like, I say that and I'm like, wait, that's an adult. I don't feel like an adult. And I know this is a real like millennial thing to say, but I'm sort of going, wait, I remember being at my dad's 40th birthday and I remember it being a big group of adults and I'm that age and I'm looking in the mirror going, I'm not an adult yet.
So not only are you an adult, you've now been an adult for an adult number of years. Your 40th is the 22nd birthday of your 18th birthday.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. And the other thing is too, and I'm sure all of the guys in the chat can relate to this too, up here, I'm still 20-year-old. I think that's very obvious in the way I show up on this podcast. I don't feel 40 at all. It's weird. It's a weird number to be associated with. Like, I know that's it, but at the same time, I'm, you know what I mean? But yeah, so the reason I brought up the nostalgia thing is I really do feel everyone's collectively feeling this heaviness. And even through all my research, right, this is something that I keep coming back to. I believe there is going to be a huge shift towards offline. As much as the governments keep trying to implement, as much as they're trying to bring AI into everything, I think you're going to find people's really starting to embrace, not in a more like off the grid, like I'm going to completely remove myself from society, from a, I'm opting out. I'm not joining whatever the next social media platform is. I'm not buying whatever the new smartphone is. And I can see this in myself. I'll give you an example. I used to be on that hamster wheel of upgrading the phone, upgrading the computer, upgrading everything, right? And as you get older, you get to a point where you go, I don't care. I'm opting out. I'm going to keep this phone until it literally dies. I'll keep my car until it dies because I don't, you know, with the car thing, I don't want a modern car. I don't want a car with all the bells and whistles. I don't want it to beep at me all the time.
Yes. I have some great news. I'm preparing a video on this. The ANCAP rules have been changed for starting next year. So the reason why cars ding at us so relentlessly now, since 2023 till now, is when it's been at its worst. It's because ANCAP, the safety ratings people, said you cannot get a 5-star rating unless you have aggressive lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control with distance monitoring and the emergency braking and that. You have to have all that stuff. You cannot get a 5-star rating without it. And in order for those things to be classified as being in the car, they have to ding and dong at you, all the beeps and boops, all the warnings, all the scolding, and they all have to default to being on every time you turn on the car, so that if you want to turn them off. And also, by the way, they actually they've made it a rule that it cannot be a single button deactivation for a lot of these systems. A lot of these systems can only be deactivated by going into menus. It has to be at least 2 buttons to be able to turn these things off. That was all ANCAP. Now, in the 2026 update, and I'm working on a video on this, they have recognized a thing called, I think it's called warning fatigue. This is something that's been known about in airliners for a long time. If everything beeps at you, number one, it's information overload. And number two, eventually the beeps stop meaning anything. You walk through a hospital ward and those nurses, I don't know how they do it. When I go to a hospital, it drives me insane. All the beep, 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 the constant beeping. The nurses have tuned that out. Now, if they hear one of the bad beeps, they definitely respond. But those beeps that are just there in the background, they've tuned those out. And this is a problem with airliners. This is a problem with pilots. You need them to pay attention. So with cars, what they've realized is people are turning all the systems off because they're too annoying. Or if they leave the systems on, they're just driving in a manner that basically ignores them. They've tuned them out. And so the new update for ANCAP, wonderful news for everybody. The systems will be easier to turn off, but more importantly, they will be far less intrusive when they're on. So you could keep a lane keeping assist on and it's not going to be bullying you and scolding you all the time. Because I like to have it on, for example, when I'm on the freeway. Like I'll turn lane keeping assist on. It's a 2017 car, so it's a pretty early version of lane keeping, but I'll turn that on just as an extra layer of protection while I'm on the open road. But I don't want the damn thing beeping at me. And as of next year, for those of you that can afford a new car, which who can, but for those that can, and then eventually they'll make their way into the secondhand market, I reckon we'll just have to avoid that 2023 to 2023 to 2026 range. Just avoid that, and you'll be able to avoid the worst of the beeps and boops.
Do you know what's interesting is I was researching Tattle Life for my thesis. Anyway. And I was looking at someone else's thread. I don't ever look at my own. And they were making fun of this person because she had a 10-year-old Porsche. And they created a hashtag that said 10-year-old Porsche. And I'll make a point, I promise. And so I was reading this dialogue between all these women who are bitching about this other woman. And my whole thing at the moment, what I'm researching is digital lateral surveillance. I'm not going to bore you with that, but I had to read these comments. And I find it really hard.
Basically. Community policing each other.
Community policing, and it's mostly common among women. And if you guys ever want to talk about my master's thesis, I'll set you up for it, but we'll do that a different day. But I find it really difficult to read hate comments about people. But I found this particular conversation really interesting because they were mocking this person for having a 10-year-old Porsche, implying that it's old, so therefore it's not good. And all I could think of is she's smart. The 10-year-old Porsche doesn't have all the bells and whistles, all the beeps, and it's a great car, and it's really, really economical, like especially the diesel model. It sips on petrol. And so I find it really interesting because in this community of women talking about someone else's car, like, they're bitching about her, they're trying to shit on her. They're mocking her for the fact that she's made a really responsible and smart choice to keep an older model car. And that's exactly how I feel about the Jeep. I mean, I'm not to keep bringing up the same story, but when I thought my Jeep was written off and I had to go look at a new car, I wanted to buy another Jeep because that's what I like. And I couldn't stand it. And, I was kind of really sad. I was like, oh God, I guess this is what I have to buy. And then I got my old car back and I was like, oh my God. Firstly, number one, it feels like a car. It's so solid. A lot of these new cars, whenever I've rented a car, it feels like paper. It feels like everything's plasticky and cheap. And if someone was to hit me, I'm like, will the car just crumple? And I think that's by design, right? And one more thing on the car thing. When I did have a replacement car when my car was getting fixed, I got an Isuzu MUX, right?
MUX?
MUX. I called it the boat because it felt like I was driving a boat. But I didn't know about the cruise control thing, right? Where if you're getting too close to a car in front of you, it literally slows you down. I didn't know what that was. And so I'm on a freeway and I'm doing 110 out on the Calder Park. I was going out Wood End direction. And the car in front of me was at least 200 meters away. They were far away. And I had every intention of getting up behind them and then overtaking. And then all of a sudden it slows me down. And then the person behind me has to slow down. And it freaked the crap out of me. And I think this matters because we're talking about, do you want to talk about the whole, you can't drink coffee or vape in your car thing?
Look, we do need to talk about it because that's a big scare campaign that's going around at the moment and it's not true, but we can get to that. Yep.
Yeah. So I actually think all of these new technologies are actually making people terrible drivers because they're reliant on them. Oh, the car will take care of it. The car will do this. And that's why they're on their phones and they're watching Netflix. I will never forget seeing a guy have his smartphone in front of his dash watching Netflix as he's in traffic. That's what they do now because they don't need to pay attention,
Yeah. So when it comes to the adaptive cruise control thing, I find it helpful, and my brain's weird, so I recognize this might make no sense to anybody else. I find it helpful to think of myself as a systems operator rather than as a driver.
Mhm.
The simplest form of this is a windscreen wiper, right? Early cars, you had on or off, and it was just one speed. It was either on or it was off. Then you had to, but you didn't have to literally like connect the wires to make it go and then reverse the wires to make it go the other. That was taken care of automatically. That was in the electronics, right? That was operated for you. Then it became multiple different speeds, and you could choose. You had to decide the speed, but the electronics sorted out everything else, did all the other details. Then it became adaptive. And so now it starts to detect how heavy the rain is. And then based on your input of whether you want lots or a little bit, it'll then figure it out from there. And so that's where you end up, you're operating a system now, or you're making the high level decisions. I need more. I need more windscreen wiper. I need less. I need whatever. And the car's taking care of the rest. We take that for granted in windscreen wipers. Essentially,
Yeah.
cars are increasingly becoming systems. So it used to be that you had to control your speed with the throttle. Now, go back before then, you had to control your timing. You could advance the timing using a little organ pull, and you could adjust the mixture and how rich it was. Now we don't have to do that. The systems, the car is already taking care of a lot of that. So this is really actually just a natural progression of a lot of that stuff that's already been happening that we take for granted. That now you don't just set the cruise control to the speed, you also set the distance at which you're happy to follow cars in front. And for exactly the reason that you just described, I always set the distance to the minimum. And it always defaults back to the medium, which is annoying. So every time I turn the car on, I have to set the distance back to the minimum because I don't want it slowing down too early because of exactly that problem, someone behind you. But it's yeah, you've got to think of it like you're a systems operator now. That's the reality of it, and that's not going to change. That's not going backwards anytime soon. That's going to continue to be the case. All right.
I love this comment from Scott. Scott, totally condone this. That is fine.
Yeah. I'm going to blast through a few super chats because they are stacking up on us. Before we get to this, drinking a coffee, getting fined $850 for drinking a coffee.
Article while you do this.
All right, yeah, you do that. All right. Made in Australia says, can't any citizen take Albert to court for treason? Not successfully. You're not going to get very far with that, I'm sorry. In theory, yes, but no, in practice. Yes, we have a cost of government crisis. Thank you, Wayne. Absolutely. CJ Westman says we have a similar issue to the UK in that any right-wing government will meet an intransigent bureaucracy. The federal government is left-wing behind the scenes. I wouldn't even say it's left-wing behind the scenes. I think it's pretty publicly, all the bureaucracy, etc., is pretty publicly left-wing. Just see how the ACT votes in their legislative elections. Look at how they voted in the Voice. They were the only jurisdiction to actually vote for the Voice. Labor Green for decades. Yes. This is one of the most important reasons why any government that's serious about saving Australia actually has to just eliminate entire departments. Because if you try and cut staff, there are all kinds of protections in place that mean that they have to get rehired elsewhere in the government and all kinds of nonsense. No, abolish entire departments. And at that point, the employees don't actually have nearly as much of a leg to stand on. So yes, it's a huge issue. And how we get out of that one, I'm not quite sure, but it's going to involve a lot of layoffs. Jiun Wong says 20 years ago, I immigrated to Australia legally at great expense to seek a life in a Western Christian society that values liberty and to escape an authoritarian Asian country. I'm screwed, aren't I? I don't think you're screwed, but it's not looking great. And we have our work cut out for us. But I don't think you're screwed yet. I don't think you're screwed.
You're
and welcome to
you're
Australia,
the people we need to be vocal. You're the people we need to be vocal, especially the immigrants who come here with exactly that sentiment. Be vocal, speak up.
Yeah. Give cushy, lazy, fat-assed Australians who don't know what a hard life actually is some perspective because we need it. We desperately need it.
Can you just, if you're still on the chat, reiterate which country you came from? I'm just curious which.
I don't know whether they were deliberately not saying that, but we'll see. So Catherine says, when it hits your own hip pocket, you notice. Yeah, this was in reference to when young people get out there and start earning their own money and having to pay taxes and these sorts of things. A lot of them do shift pretty quickly, and a lot more of them will shift if the Liberal Party actually give them a real alternative. Pro Engineer's spot on. LNP cannot go half-assed on this. They have to go all in to the Menzies roots, ditch net zero for starters, and then maybe they'll have a chance. Yes, You're absolutely right. This can't be some mealy mouthed, oh, we're going to push net zero back to 2070. No, instant death, the electoral oblivion. They have to go all the way on this. There's no other way to do it.
He's just come back saying Singapore, which I find really interesting because we've actually got a lot of Australians migrating to Singapore for better economic opportunities. So just goes to show the grass is always greener, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it can be. Depends on which particular sort of things you're looking at. Joe says truth and kindness are the best things. If you don't have that, knowledge can be very dangerous. 100%. 100%. And people mistake education for wisdom as well. That's the other thing. Yeah. I have a lot of education, therefore I know what should be done. No, but you have no wisdom. So we're going to keep you away from power.
Just few more. On that comment, just on that comment about education, I saw the guys talking about this in the chat. One of the comments was about how universities are the biggest problem, which is exactly why I keep saying to people we need to take them back. And that's the biggest issue, is they're made to believe that there is only one way of thinking. And I know that as someone who's currently in the system, it's terrifying. And I'm about to submit a paper that kind of like goes against feminist theory. And I sent it to a professor today to have a look at, and he's like, oof, you are brave. And I said, why is that? And he's like, he goes, you didn't just take down feminism, you took down a lot of key discussions that are sort of like accepted narratives in the university system. And he's like, and you've done so with like methodic, like surgical precision. And he goes, I wouldn't be surprised if you cop some serious like kickback on this. I'm like, this is my point. I'm going to go in there and bulldoze. And I'm not saying go back to uni, guys, but like if you're at all interested in further education, that's the only way we take it back.
Yeah. Now, I need to put you on notice, Carly. I do need to finish in 20 minutes. I need to keep this to a 2-hour show because I've only got 3 days in studio this week, and I have to make enough content to get me through 8 days in 3 days. So I need my beauty sleep tonight.
God help you then.
Yeah, God help me indeed. Jian Wong says, Marty McFly traveled 30 years back in time to 1955, and then he traveled 30 years to his future of 2015. Which is 10 years ago from today.
That's not nice. Don't do that.
Yeah, please don't do that, Jian Wong. Also, I need viewers to tell me, is Carly freezing on your screen? Is it me that's dropping out, or is it Carly? Because Carly keeps freezing on my screen.
I think it's
you.
And
I really want to give her a really hard time about the fact that she's using a Mac, but I can't do that until you confirm for me that it really is her end, not mine, that is the problem. Cruel Intentions, I have a car that's I'm assuming you're referring to the year that it was made. That's a 72. It's not a 72-year-old car. I don't know. Maybe it could be. And a Harley that's 42. I've not ever had a new car. I've never had a new car either, but that's not because I'm into my classics. It's because I ain't rich. Found Hope says, regarding the nostalgia, Carly's not freezing. What? Was I freezing for you guys? I don't know. That's weird. Hang on. Let me just. Yeah, that should be all right. Computer's a little bit hot. Maybe. Regarding the nostalgia meme, there is a lady I see on my way to work, and I can't pick her age. She could be anywhere from 21 to 65. There is no movement in her face, and it all looks like Uncanny Valley. So for those that aren't familiar, the Uncanny Valley is a thing where there's something about the human psyche. When we see something that is almost real looking, but not quite, we find it really objectionable. You know, you look at a doll that's obviously a doll and it's not trying to look like an actual human. You go, oh, that's a nice doll. Then you look at a porcelain doll where it's almost human, but not quite. And it is creepy AF, right? It just, I don't know. There's something just, ugh. So that's the Uncanny Valley where they're just not quite human. So what Found Hope is saying here is, yeah, so much Botox that you can't even be sure that they're human.
Grab your drinks. This is literally what I talk about in, what is it? My master's. Yes. Excellent. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
I tell you what, our live show is going to be one messy, boozy affair.
Shot. That's what we can do, the oddies. We can give them all shot glasses. No, we can't do that because then they'll die.
Liver poisoning. We can all give them ambulance memberships so that they don't have to pay for the ambulance ride to the hospital afterwards.
That might be appropriate. Yeah, absolutely. Have we got some more super chats? Let's go.
Yeah, a couple more. So I bet you both go to a crossroads and show a map and a compass to a Gen Z and say, go north. While you wait, I'll buy you the cigar you would need. It better be a big one.
I've seen so
Better be a
many of
big one.
those videos. I love it when they show them things like a Melways or the old, I don't even know what you call it, like the phone that you, what do you call those?
Oh yeah, the dial phones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I did my doctorate in Melbourne. It makes me very sad.
Yeah. Look, I lived 22 years in Melbourne.
Rotary phone, that's what it's called. I'm really sad about Melbourne, and I'm so on the fence. Like on the podcast yesterday, it was really interesting actually, and I wanted to make this point with you. He's from New South Wales, and he was asking me questions about Melbourne. Is it that bad? And I said to him, well, what have you heard? Because I was curious to hear what someone from New South Wales was hearing. He's like, you know, we've heard some things, but not as much as you might think we've heard. And I was telling him, you know, this scenario, all the stuff that we would have talked about on this podcast. And he was genuinely taken aback. He was like, we're not hearing that here. And I think that's by design. I think that's deliberate. And I said to him, you know, this is the reality of Victoria. It's nothing like what you know. And he made the comment that he hadn't been down since COVID. And he's like, I used to love Victoria. I loved everything about Victoria. And I said, it's a shadow of itself now. So it was just really interesting. You know, for the most part, I think a lot of us live in these echo chambers and we're not hearing about a lot of stuff. And to be fair, I don't know what's going on in New South Wales or Queensland. So I'm proving my point there. Anyway.
Yeah. So let's get to this coffee cup thing. And this might have to be the last story of tonight. So what they're saying is the $1,500 SIP, Australia's strict new driving fines for eating, drinking, and vaping. And you will find this story.
Quick.
Yeah, you'll find this story in a number of different forms on a number of different websites. And it went absolutely bonkers. I had more than a dozen people send it to me saying, hey, have you seen this? My own wife brought it up with me and she said, oh, can you believe it? And I said, no, I don't believe it because I've already researched it because by then I had been working on a video. So I've got a video coming out about this. The actual story here is about AI generated clickbait that is then being used by AI to fact check itself. So there is an entire industry, and I'm gonna take yours off the screen and I'm gonna put mine up because it's better. There we go. So there is an entire industry that makes money from harvesting eyeballs. If they can just get you to click on their link and the ads load, bing, they get paid. Only a few cents or, you know, fractions of a cent for each of those ads. But if they can get a mega viral story like this one to go absolute gangbusters, then in no time at all, they've made some really serious coin. Now, there's a couple of things you need to pay attention to immediately here that should ring some alarm bells. Firstly, who's it by?
Michelle. No last name.
Who's Michelle? No last name.
I don't know.
This is consistent. I'm going to be showing a bunch of these details in my video because this is consistent across all of the different versions of this article that you'll see. Also, have a look at the image.
It's AI.
It's a cartoon. It's an AI cartoon that's been generated. So there's no name. This is on a no-name website.
And Aussies don't wear hats like that.
Yeah, there are no links to any authoritative announcements. There are no. So if you Google it, you'll get heaps of results. None of them from any mainstream media outlet. None of them from any bigger kind of an outlet. No announcements from the police minister, the roads minister. Nothing. None of the things that you would go to find a source document. Now, why does this happen? This happens because the people that make money from eyeballs, they will literally go to Google. They will literally, hang on, I hadn't spotted that. Why is his wrapper on the outside of the car? Hang on, can we just get rid of that comment for a second?
Matt.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, I hadn't even, you know what? My brain hadn't even noticed that. So
well done.
People who make money from eyeballs are using AI to get ideas for stories. So they'll go to AI and say, hey, listen, coffee's super popular. What would be a viral story, real or fake, about coffee? Right? And it'll spit out 10 different ideas. There's a coffee shortage due to a cyclone. No, not really. You're going to get fined for drinking a coffee in your car. Oh, hello. Now we're ding, ding, ding. We're on a winner. It's coffee. People love coffee. It's cars. People are very protective of their cars. It's traffic fines. People hate traffic fines. We have a winner. So then they don't even write the story. They then go back to AI and say, hey, take this headline. What would the story be? Can you attach it to anything? Can you make it sound reasonable? And they literally get AI to do the heavy lifting. In the case of that article there that we're just showing the picture of, they don't even make a picture for it. They literally get AI to do absolutely everything. Now, here's the kicker. This is going to take me a minute to do because I wasn't set up to do this today. I'm going to remove that one from the studio. I'm going to get you a couple of other images because there's a few other little. Okay. So this is a website called Timberbuild or something like that, which carried this story. Sorry, G-Man, I've got to get rid of your comment there. Notice on the bottom left of the image I've put up, that little hovering, floating button that says free gift. Okay. Now, it's going to take me a minute to do, but I've got to remove that one out of the studio. I'm going to get you a different one. So remember, that one said free gift.
That's a Temu thing.
Over here, this one, exact same story, same little floaty thing in a different color that says try your luck, click and win. Now, this one, I guarantee you, this website here called Dabble was put up by the same person that put up Timberbuild. They've used the same template that has the same pop-ups. They're pointing in different directions. They've got different kinds of affiliates, but literally someone has had AI generate a viral story for them, and then they are plastering it up over multiple different sources. Now what happens, and I regret this because I didn't get the screenshot when I should have. When I first started my research, I typed into Google. That's where I start. I'll use other search engines as well, but Google is my starting point. And I go, okay, can you get fined for drinking a coffee in Australia whilst driving? And it said, yes, you can. And it told me how much the fine was and blah, blah, blah. In the AI overview, you know how it's got the AI overview thing. It told me that straight away. And I went, oh, gosh, how have I not heard about this until that's the sort of thing this is literally what I do. Like I keep up with this stuff. How is this blindsided me? And so then I went and did other research and I discovered actually, no, that AI overview had grabbed misinformation from AI generated clickbait stories. Then I went back this afternoon as I was writing my script to get that screenshot of the AI overview getting it wrong. And the AI overview was different. It now says, yes, you can, but not because you're drinking a coffee, only if you lose control of your car, right? If you fail to exercise control over your car, which is actually the correct answer. So I missed that screenshot, unfortunately, but that would have absolutely sort of proved my point, how this is now the snake eating its own tail. This is AI feeding you information based on what it found on websites that were written by AI for the purpose of clickbait and click harvesting. This is going to become a huge problem going forward. So I've got a video in the works literally about this particular case study to say, hey guys, there are some things you need to look for. If the website you're going to is just about ads and weight loss pills and everything else, if it's got all the floaty little clicks and click here and win, and we've got a free gift for you and all that kind of nonsense, if the person's name is just their first name, if it's not a dated article and it doesn't have links to any actual sources, any reputable, if the BBC was writing an article about this, that have a link back to the ministerial release, that have a link back to a bunch of other kind of information that you could then go back and find actual sources for. If there's none of that there, then you should be taking an enormous grain of salt.
Yeah, that's good you picked that up because I just saw it and I've been busy writing all day. So I was trying not to look at social media and I saw that and I was like, what the hell? That's outrageous. But on the AI thing, there's a couple of things here. Like recently last week, Deloitte came under fire because they delivered a proposal or a document to the government that had hallucinated citations in it. Now, this is something massive in the university industry, right? AI, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when we say AI hallucinates, and this is where I'll go super deep into my research, but AI is built on data sets, right? So it's learning from what already exists. AI doesn't have an imagination. It can't create content. It literally just pulls data from what it has. And so Deloitte, they're a legal firm, Deloitte, or are they accounting? I forget.
I thought they were accounting, like a business management, high-level business consultant.
PwC? They're basically consultants.
I thought they were on the price, in that what's the other big one? All those guys, Yeah.
Okay. So Deloitte are the government's go-to supplier for a lot of big consultations around, accounting, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and they got paid over $300,000 for this consultation. And they delivered a report where the citations, which is references to other academic articles or studies were incorrect. Now that is
Yeah.
the biggest faux pas you can commit, right? And so
Like,
and I
far
tried this out because obviously I'm studying AI and also using AI. So I need to make sure like I'm checking everything and I'm cross-referencing. So
Yeah.
for the sake of pointing it out here, I use ChatGPT, I use Grok, I use Perplexity and Gemini, and I go across all four. So if I'm writing something, I then check it, I then go and find the article, and then I
Yeah.
use Control F to make sure I'm finding the actual quote and it's actually in the article and I'm looking at it with my eyeballs. Because
Yeah.
this has happened to me repeatedly. I will give ChatGPT a 60-page document, right? There's no way in hell I'm sitting there reading that whole thing. It's full of pompous waffle. So I get AI to read through it, tell me firstly, is it applicable to what I'm doing? And is there anything in there that's worth focusing on? And then it tells me the page numbers. Now, often it's spat out quotes and I'm like, wow, that's a really good quote. That's like exactly what I need. I'm like, what page is that on? And they're like, oh, it's on this page. And I go and I can't find it, right? So then I try and Control F to find it. It's not there. And I realize it's not only paraphrasing, it's paraphrasing. It's
Paraphrasing. Yeah.
creating content to supplement what I need it to. It's filling in a
Yeah.
dot or a gap
Yeah.
that's there. And so that's when it's hallucinating. It's basically going off our content and our exchanging the conversation, going, oh, well, this will fit really well here. And it's not
Yeah.
actually real.
Yeah.
So the fact that Deloitte were
Mhm.
uncovered for that, and there was also a massive legal issue that went viral in the legal community. Same thing. The citations were hallucinated by AIs, but obviously in legal matters.
They were submitted into court. There was I remember this crossed my desk. There was a court case where they submitted evidence that was based
Referencing
on
a case that
AI
wasn't real.
hallucinations. Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously huge issue with that. So, anyone who understands law, when they reference precedent, cases that have happened where, they can
precedents,
build
yes.
their case on,
Yeah.
they're citing things that weren't actually happening, and this was all tabled in court. So
Yeah.
AI is presenting a whole lot of hallucinated content, and I'm getting caught out on it, and I'm studying this, and I'm going, wow, okay, so this is where I'm getting caught. And what my first thing when I saw that whole article about the drinking and the vaping was that there is no way in hell they can implement this technology because AI hallucinates. Even now, in 2025, with the way AI is, even with the new version of Grok and ChatGPT, it cannot count fingers. AI still gets tripped up on fingers, on toes, and little things like that. So imagine if we were using AI cameras to try and manage that, and someone's like scratching their nose or something. There's no AI with the current iteration of it could do that. No way.
Yeah, but we also, just at a matter of principle, we need to be pushing back on this sort of stuff pretty hard. Not that that's happening, but we have just seen the rollout. And the reason I think why that story went so viral is because a lot of people are aware that we do now have AI-enabled cameras that are looking for mobile phones that can they can find you for everything all at once. They can check the seatbelt, check for mobile phone usage, check your speed, check your registration, and just sort of do the whole lot as you drive past at once. And that technology does now exist. It is being rolled out in capital cities. In West Australia, they had a grace period that has now ended. So if you were counting on that grace period, maybe stop counting on that because that's over. We are seeing these technologies being rolled out. They're being used in law enforcement, but it's amazing how often these bulletproof technologies, which AI isn't, but there was a case in Victoria, I believe it was, when they rolled out their time over distance cameras on the Hume Freeway heading north out of Melbourne, where a bus driver was sued, or a bus company was not sued, was fined for speeding. And the operator looked at it, was a small operator. They looked at it and went, hang on, my bus isn't capable of that speed. And so they demanded to see the photos, and the police never provided the photos. So it ended up in court, and he got the photos for the first time there in court. And he took the two photos. So this is the photo that we took of your bus at this one, and this is the photo and the timestamp at that one, and the distance is this. So your speed had to have been that, and that's what the fine is based on. And he looked at it, and one of the number plates was 1 digit different, identical buses. Then one of the number plates was 1 digit different. And so we presented that to the court, and the whole thing got thrown out. And then there was an investigation to try and figure out what the hell happened. An importer had brought in 3 identical buses from the supplier and had them all registered at once. And so the registrations went dit, 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 1 digit apart
Yeah.
each. And they both happened to be driving on the same day heading north out of Melbourne. And that's how
There you
that
go.
problem unfolded. So if something as bulletproof as time over distance cameras, we've got a photograph of you at this location, timestamped, and we have another timestamp photograph of you at that location. If something as bulletproof as that can end up in a courtroom with someone being prosecuted for a speed that their bus couldn't even physically do, then how much worse is that going to get when AI are failing to count fingers?
It's really interesting. And the more I've looked into AI, the more like I'm not too worried about it at the moment. I think the rollout of AI in big things like that, like whether it's surveillance or it's in legal documents and things like that, I think people are going to go, you know what, this is too hard. Let's go back to the old way. I've certainly done that with a lot of things. I'm like, AI is actually making it more time consuming because now I'm having to reference and re-reference. And it's frustrating. So I'm like, I'll just read it myself. It's quicker.
Well, I use AI to help shortcut my research, but all I use it for is to point me in directions. I then actually have to go back to the source documents myself because, like you said, you can't even trust a quote out of AI.
No,
and especially you have to be really careful how you write your prompts, because if the AI thinks that it knows what you're looking for, that dramatically increases the likelihood that it will make something up.
You have to argue with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had it tell me point blank the other day. I was trying to remember which years the Karen, Julie Inman Grant, had worked for Twitter, because I knew she had. I was just like, I can't remember the years. I had Grok open in front of me, so I punched it in there. And it told me point blank that Julie Inman Grant, the E-Safety Commissioner, had never worked for Twitter. I'm like, excuse me. And I literally, I'm sitting there with Grok open. I literally just wrote, look again. And bang, that was my prompt. And then it came back, oh, sorry, 2014 to 2016. She did work for Twitter.
Yeah, okay. Oh, it's funny you say that. So I use ChatGPT to make our thumbnails for Monday night. And ChatGPT is very politically correct, and it won't do political figures. But as you guys have seen tonight, it's got Donald Trump in it. I have to trick it. I'm like, this is what I want. And it goes, oh, I can't do that because of political figures. I'm like, okay, no worries. And then it goes, do you want me to do something similar? I'm like, yes, please. And then I say, oh, can you make the hair look a little bit more like this? Actually, let's use this as a reference style. And then eventually I get exactly what I want. I get Donald Trump. You just have to trick AI. And if I can trick AI, God, what can far more intelligent people do?
And people have shown them, have got videos of themselves kind of breaking the protections. It's like, it's not supposed to be able to give you terrorist advice, but they can sit there and with a couple of prompts, finally get the AI to kind of drop all of its guards and get whatever information they know, how to cook meth and how to do all kinds of different things. It's not hard to do. AI will develop. It will get better at a lot of these things. But the bottom line is the actual problem isn't the AI. The problem is the human dependency. I mean, you talked earlier about agency. And the human beings that give up their agency to an AI, even as a helper, are going to have a really hard time in the future, I think. And the people that actually maintain their own sense of agency and their own ability to think for themselves and their ability to question, to push back, AI is in the lives of many people, it's becoming a new authority, an omnipotent, omniscient authority. It knows everything. Whatever the AI says must be right.
Alliteration.
Well, it's a little bit
alliteration.
Sorry?
I said I love a bit of alliteration. Continue. Sorry.
Right. It is a little bit Book of Revelation, which is what I thought you said, and I was like, oh, that's unusual coming out of your mouth, Carly.
That too.
But so we need to wind up. But my theory, I've said this a few times in public. I wonder if this is not a prediction, this is not a prophecy, but I wonder if the Antichrist, as described in Revelation, which of course there's not one Antichrist there. The Antichrist is people who literally work against Christ and against the knowledge of Christ. But the Antichrist, as we kind of see it described, this miracle working thing that you can't do business unless you have the mark of the beast, etc. Whether we are actually talking about an AI type of Internet of Things with digital currencies that you can't engage in commerce, internet. It's very difficult to survive and live and earn and spend without having bought into that system. And the way I think that such a thing would happen, if it were to happen, and again, this is not a prediction, I'm just watching going, this could be a thing, would be if someday someone has the bright idea of telling the existing AIs, whatever they are at that point in time, to put their heads together and build a new AI from scratch. then an AI that was built by AIs that is then hypothetically able to do things and think things and conclude things that are beyond human comprehension would become a miracle working entity, would become, in an age of CRISPR and gene editing and genetically specific cancer therapies and all sorts of things, we could see it curing diseases and doing all kinds of things that meet a lot of the descriptions that we see in Revelation. And I could certainly see a day where human leaders around the world, for their own self-interest, of course, would say, hey, everybody, how about we let AI make all the difficult geopolitical decisions? Because it has no agenda. It has no dog in this fight. What if we all just accept this AI is going to be the arbitrator? Well, by default,
you writing a script, or this sounds like a great Hollywood movie? I feel like I've seen this before.
I was going to say, I feel like it has been made numerous times before. I don't know. Maybe I should get into writing fiction. It can't be any worse than reality right now. But I could see a world where some kind of a future AI, probably an AI written by AI, so literally no human beings even had a hand in developing it, could become something that is an object of worship. It's something that is given all power. I could see a world where that happens.
You're talking about it becoming sentient, and as it currently stands, that's a bit of a stretch. Not to say it won't be in the future, but I honestly think this is my predicament, and I could be wrong, so you're welcome to disagree with me, everyone. But I think that getting a taste of it and seeing people's initial reaction, it's it's interesting because it's like you've never seen it before, and it's comical and it's entertaining, but then it gets very boring. And I've mentioned this before. There's a lot of AI content going out there. I've mentioned this same podcaster. I'm not going to shame this person because I'm not trying to make them feel bad. But there's someone that I keep getting sent this person's videos. I can't stand listening to this person. I'm not saying they're a bad person, but their script is entirely AI generated, and it frustrates me because that's not how a human speaks. And I see this now. The captions, straight away, as soon as I realize it's ChatGPT, I don't listen to it. Correct. And I even had my lecturer reach out to me the other day, and he's like, Carly, you understand AI. Is this AI generated? And straight away, aside from the M dashes, there's a way that AI speaks, and it's insanely irritating once you understand the recipe. And even now, there's an AI called Originality AI, right? Where you can take a written document and put it in there to see if it was AI generated, and it claims to have 100% accuracy. And there was a big article about this. Someone put in the Declaration of Independence, and it came back as 100% AI. The reason being, what AI is looking for is correct syntax, perfect grammar, well-structured sentences. And obviously a document written almost 300 or 250 years ago was well written in traditional English. And so it came back and flagged as 100% AI. And now what I've been doing, just for interest's sake, is I've been writing my own stuff and putting it in Originality. And in one paragraph, it's like, this is 100% human. But in the whole document, it says 100% AI. And then further to that, I'm referencing old articles that were written maybe early 2000s or 2010. I plug that into AI, and it comes back saying, yes, this is 100% AI. So this is the problem. Right? It is, the whole thing is quite absurd with AI at the moment, which is why I'm not too worried about it, because I really do believe that people are going to opt out. This is no longer fun. This is no longer interesting. And I think we're seeing that a lot with AI content as far as, news, but also movies, music. It's boring. It doesn't have that human element, and therefore people are going to switch off.
Well, speaking of no longer being fun or interesting, we do need to wind up
I knew you were going to do that. That's why I sent you that line.
However, we've just got two quick super chats, and the next one is a really good one to finish on. But this is Joe. I have a friend in Queensland who was fined $1,150 for having his phone on his lap. He was driving into Melbourne, and he has a ute. The cameras picked that up, and he got that through the mail. Yeah, it's crazy. But also, when you look at the state of Victoria's finances, you can understand they'll come chasing that money any which way they have to. We've got the basket case state at the moment. All right, we're going to finish on this, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. But Banana Mags in Pajamas says, just want to say I really appreciate you too. It's voices like yours that gives me hope for this country. Well, you're welcome, Banana Mags in Pajamas. We do appreciate it.
And can everyone just take a minute to acknowledge I only said one naughty word this entire podcast?
Dropped a single F-bomb.
I was on my bestest behavior.
Bestest.
I can be intelligent if I want to. sometimes.
It's just so rare that you want to. So on Wednesday, we are going to talk about the backtrack on the superannuation unrealized gains tax. This is a bigger deal than people realize because of the indexation of the tax rates. This is a chink in the armor that will actually potentially is going to allow us to get indexation of income tax rates in the near future as well. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
Also, we're going to talk about the Lydia Thorpe thing because I didn't really want to get into that today because I find her insufferable, but I feel like we should talk about that.
Yes.
He said her Carly say erection. That's not a swear word, guys. Is it? Am I allowed to say erection?
All right, we've got to get out of here. Make sure you do the coffee thing.
Scott's just asked. Scott, so everyone sign up over here, buy us a coffee. You'll see the membership tiers. I made more available, but I do have to turn it off. And I'm not trying to sell you guys. I'm just saying, like, there has to be a cutoff point. That's it. So please, if you want to do it, go for it. You don't have to. Just saying, there it is.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you on Wednesday night when we stream the main Oddcast episode. And it should be a fun one based on some of the topics. Carl's a pleasure.
And guys, also, if you're a member, shoot me messages in Ko-fi. I read them and we can use those to create stories. So anything you want to send us, please use that platform. DM us. Let us know.
Cool.
All right, guys.
See you all later.
See you. Bye.
Bye.